Hello, everyone. This is Kristen Redmond, and today we are going to go over what in the world is happening in the skies right now because there is some crazy energy afoot, no doubt about it. Because we have these eclipses that are happening. These are the last eclipses for the year, but these are very intense eclipses because they deal with the very intense sign of Scorpio. So it's dredging up all sorts of things that we thought were dormant inside of ourselves. It's creating power struggles. It's creating difficulty. It's forcing us to let things go. There's so much that's happening in this time. And as a result, I thought, you know what, heck, I'm going to do a video and we're going to talk about it. So people can feel reassured that it's not just you and it's not that you're doing something wrong. Maybe you're doing something extremely right. And in order for this movement to go forward, we have to let some things go and we have to realize some things. And I think that's what these eclipses, I don't think I know, this is what these eclipses are bringing up right now, is for us to see what it is that has to be let go. So let's get into it. Let's get into it here. Okay. What are eclipses, right? What are eclipses in astrology? In the world of astrology, eclipses deal with the two main important things, which are the luminaries known as the sun and the moon. Sun represents who we are and what we do externally. It's our external self that the world sees. And then the moon, of course, represents our inner self, our emotional self, and how we operate subconsciously. So we have our inner self and our outer self. So that's why both of those are so important in astrology. Now, when the eclipses happen, we have either, the moon is overshadowing the sun, or, it's a total blackout. These things happen, and then the earth becomes between it, and we create these eclipses, right? And these eclipses, what they do is they pull out the old that's in our lives, and it says this isn't working anymore, and it has to change. And when you do let these things go, that's when the new can come in, right? Easy enough, right? But those are the hardest things to do in life, especially when we get in comfort zones. And these eclipses this year are dealing with that area of comfort zones, and that's the Scorpio and Taurus. Taurus is the comfort zone part of it. Dynamic. That's what we're dealing with right now. So these eclipses that are bringing up, they're saying we need new beginnings happening on all these different levels. We're not just talking about on a personal level. It's happening citywide, statewide, nationwide, and globally, and I'm sure beyond too as well. But what we're looking at right now is how this is making this impact on us, saying we have some stuff we got to be letting go. And what we're letting go of, all right, Scorpio is asking us to let go. It's asking us to let go of old patterns and outdated belief systems that keep us stuck in the past, because it's time to free ourselves from that. A lot of these things have been brought up, of course, this year because of the eclipses. And now when these eclipses happen, they happen every year, but they happen in different signs every year. And these work in 10-year intervals. So not only are these eclipses bringing up some energies that were brought to your attention of things that needed to be changed back in 2012, 2011, we'll even put it in that time frame, 2000, let's just say 2011 to 13. Let's just say that, just to give ourselves a little extra time frame here. Stuff got brought up then, and we started to see, gosh, I keep seeing these same cycles again and again, and maybe we weren't ready to deal with them now. Then 2018 rolled around, and Jupiter made its transit through Scorpio, really bringing those painful wounds up and saying, hey, are we ready to deal with them now? Maybe we were, maybe we weren't. Maybe that's when actual realization happened, where you did have to start moving away from things that you considered to be your comfort zone, as Jupiter was trying to expand you outside of those old ways that weren't serving you anymore. So here we go into these eclipses, right? And holy smokes, it's saying we have some stuff that was dredged up from that 2012 time frame, because this is what happens, right? Maybe we're not ready to deal with it then. But then we get to a point where these eclipses come through, and I tell you what, I always tell my clients that the eclipses are the most important thing, really, as an astrologer. What you look at in somebody's current chart or transit chart to see what's going on now, you look to see where the eclipses are happening, because that's where the new beginnings are trying to come in. They don't just happen easily. We got to put that work in, right? And so we look at this and we go, holy smokes, it's been 12 years um, of a lot of realizations that have been coming to a head. And these eclipses come through, and it's kind of like the proverbial flush on the toilet. It's saying, this is the time to let this go. This is the time to let this go. So you're going to be finding that this is a year where around the times of these eclipses, that the universe is showing you signs. And like I tell my clients, it's like they're billboards from the universe. They're so dang big. They're so dang obvious, where the universe is saying, holy smokes, this doesn't work anymore. We got to let it go. So the first part of these eclipse cycles happened April 30th and on May 16th. So that's when the billboards were put up. And I think these things got triggered anyway. I mean, these are things, it's not like they've been, not seen. Obviously these are things that you've been thinking on, especially since that 2018 time when Jupiter went through. Now we're going into the last half of them. That was the realization period, April 30th, May 16th. So in that whole month time frame, right, we're going to go 2 weeks before and then 2 weeks after. So that 4 to 6 week time frame, that's when that realization was happening. So dial it back and go, okay, what was happening in my life then? And is there something similar happening now? Because now is where the juice of it happens. This is where the universe is ready for us to go beyond the realization and actually start to purge, let go, and welcome in the new. But that's kind of the hardest part, right? That's definitely the hardest part, because that's what Scorpio is all about. Scorpio is the sign that deals with stuff a lot of people don't want to think about, okay? It deals with trauma, death, loss, crisis, debt, anything that we share. So debt falls into that category. Of course, sex and intimacy falls into that as well. But these are areas that people, they get a little bit like, squeamish talking about it with other people, because it's so highly personal, right? And so Scorpio deals with the idea that it's okay to talk about these things, because we can't have the new unless something dies and something ends, right? And then the rebirth happens. So here we are, where the universe is saying, what are we ready to let go of in order for this new to come in? Yeah, okay. Well, I know one thing that the universe definitely wants us to let go of. It's our old, outdated programs and patterns that we find ourselves repeating again and again. Some of these patterns are not even ours, right? Maybe they're a genetic type of situation that's been passed down through the lineage, generation after the next, a belief system. In our family, we don't have money. In our family, we don't hug. In our family, we don't do this. And so that motto gets ingrained in you, and you subconsciously kind of deflect money or intimacy, hugs, you name it, right? So it can be inherited through that, or it's just something we accrue this lifetime through experiences of our own that were very difficult. And a lot of times that's trauma and crisis, things that are very traumatizing to us. We will repress them and we'll push them down, because that's the way our brain is hardwired, right? When something happens, in order to survive in that moment, it knows, it's amazing, that brain of ours, it knows how to categorize what's happening, and it can push back what's happening in that moment, so you can pull on your reserves and actually deal with what you have to in that time frame. It's a survival mechanism, right? But what's not great about that is that a lot of times we kept those things shoved down in there, right? We don't want to deal with that pain. We don't want to deal with that realization. And we're just hoping maybe if I ignore it, it'll go away. Right. Okay. Well, the thing is, we all know, right, that a lot of times this doesn't go away, and it keeps repeating in different areas of our lives, doesn't it? Maybe it impacts your relationships. Maybe it makes it so you can't hold a job very long because you hit a certain threshold, and that's where that uncomfortable feeling comes up, and you're like, what in the world is this? I can't do this. That's what happens. We have these repeating patterns that go again and again and again and again. And so Scorpio eclipses are asking us, one, to see what those repetitive cycles are, whether they're from this lifetime, intergenerational type of things, or maybe it's a past life type of thing as well too, because of course that's going to be buried deeply subconsciously. But they start surfacing as well in our dreams and in our waking life. We start to get insights. I feel like I've been here before. I feel like I've gone through this. I'm ready to let this go, right? But especially those patterns that deal with the limiting beliefs, whether they're limiting beliefs that you've inherited from the family, like we were saying earlier with the money, or there's a million things, right? But maybe that's something your whole life that you felt, I'm so ugly. I feel, rejected by my peers in school, and nobody likes me and what have you. And then what happens is that kid will carry that on throughout their lifetime, right? Then they're always thinking that they're the ugly duckling, and that nobody's going to want them or what have you. That's the thing, right? I think what happens is we don't realize that these beliefs, they're keeping us stuck. They're keeping us stuck. And so these eclipses come up that started last year, they end this year, and they're saying, let's recognize that. Let's recognize that and let's release that. Yes, because we need to. I have so many notes here. I have so many notes on here. Yes, let's go this way. Okay. More with these beliefs, right? Let's go more with these beliefs and what all this is. What's getting brought up, especially now, because I'm noticing that there's more clients calling for appointments. They're just, friends and family and just people in my own circle and such. There is that feeling and recognition that the universe is definitely trying to force some things to end for them, but it's also bringing up some fairly tough things that they did not realize were coming up. A lot of these things have to center around issues that deal with power and control, abuse, wounds that we have buried very deeply within us, because that's what Scorpio likes to do on its shadow side, is hide things. It can be incredibly secretive. So that's why it will bury these painful things like we were talking about earlier. This is a time frame when psychological issues like anxiety, fear, things like that are coming to the surface. This is a time frame when maybe there is actual death and loss and grief associated with that. But maybe it's also a time frame where these eclipses are bringing up the grief that you've been able to suppress just so you could be in that survival mode, right? Maybe you lost somebody back in 2018. Maybe you lost somebody back in 2012. And you're not realizing how much that grief is still stuck and stagnated in your energetic field. And now these eclipses are coming through and they're like, holy smokes, person, it's time to let this go because we're ready to move forward. That's another thing. Another thing too, with these Scorpio and Taurus eclipses, is that both of these signs deal with financial matters. So you may be also finding that this is a year where maybe your repetitive patterns in finances and how you handle debt in general, how those cycles don't necessarily work for you now. And I tell you what, when we put these things in, whether it's the grief, whether it's the realization that maybe there are some psychological issues that you're ready to get help for. Maybe you're ready to do that. Maybe this is a situation where some of those deep wounds are coming up. A lot of people are having abuse resurfacing now. I've seen that a lot this year, a lot. So if you are somebody that is dealing with this, don't feel alone. Okay, the universe doesn't want you holding on to being that victim any longer. I have seen it so often this year with many clients where they didn't even realize that they were abused as a child. And they're having flashbacks, they're having memories, they're watching TV, things are coming through out of nowhere. They're talking to somebody at the store, and all of a sudden a memory gets triggered. We're being triggered much easier this year under the influence of these because it's bringing it to the surface, saying it's ready to be let go. To be let go of. Absolutely. So yes, and then another thing too, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but we're going to bring that back around too. What could also be coming up in this year is that ability or inability to create true intimacy with others. And it can even be with creating true intimacy with yourself and accepting yourself and loving yourself for who you are. Those types of issues also are coming to the surface as well too, because it's really hard to give of yourself when you don't have a lot of respect and love for yourself, and a lot of times that comes from the fact that maybe we're still operating on old systems of what we used to believe we deserved 20 years ago. Holy hell, it could be 50 years ago, in some cases. But that's what happens, right? Our brains get a used to these ways of being and what we're willing to settle with or settle for. And as a result, we're not getting what we truly deserve. And then as a result, I think over time, we start to get upset about that, and that can get taken out on the people that are around us, and unfortunately that's closest people around us too, and that creates that block to intimacy, right? So this is a time frame where these eclipses are going, where am I settling and where am I selling myself short? That's the thing, because what happens with those is it creates those repetitive cycles. We sell ourselves short or we settle for things. And maybe it's because we don't realize how valuable we are and how much we deserve that. I think if that could be one of the major underlying points of this, is that all of this difficulty this year isn't happening to slow you down. It's to help you and to help you recognize that you deserve so much more and so much better. But in order to get that, there's things that have to be released to do that, right? So this is a great time to do that. This is a great time to do that because we have the full moon that's coming up on November 8th. That's the last of the eclipses. And then of course, this eclipse is happening on Tuesday, on the 25th, on October 25th. That's the new moon eclipse. New moon is where we manifest what we want. Full moon is where we release it. So you've got a couple of weeks here to really sit with what the energy is of the universe showing you in this time frame, of those repetitive cycles, of the ways that you keep hitting that repeat button again and again, and what needs to go. And then you can start letting those things go bit by bit. And that's the thing, right? Anytime we try to rewire the programming in our brain, it's not going to happen overnight. And I think a lot of people get really, really frustrated and down on themselves and give up in these transformative times because they think, holy man, I didn't do it. I knew it. And just by realizing that should be enough to heal it. And a lot of it just isn't. That's not the way that our brain is hardwired, right? I'm sure you've probably heard this before, right? Where you want to establish a new habit, it takes 1,000 hours of doing something to become a master of it. It takes at least 21 consecutive days to change a habit that's bad. So to expect yourself to change a whole lifetime of neural programming in your brain overnight is just impossible, and it's just not fair to put that on yourself. So keep this in mind, that the realizations are happening. You're going to start putting those changes in now. You're going to recognize when those things happen, and you're going to make an active choice to do something different. That could take 100 times. That could take 1,000 times. But I tell you what, eventually, what's called neuroplasticity in your brain, you're going to rewire the way that your brain subconsciously reacts to these triggers that have happened in your life, and you're going to respond differently. Maybe you're one that immediately says, let's use this as an example. Like, let's say you're somebody that's always like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll go there. And you really don't want to do it, but you're always like, yeah, because you feel like that gives you worth and value if you're a yes person and you do everything. But it's killing you. It's killing you. And you're realizing it this year, okay? So now these eclipses, you're realizing it here on the 25th. You're ready to let that go into the universe on November 8th and say, I want to change this about myself. I want to think about what's best for me first, respond accordingly, and it's okay for me to give myself that time. You're making these things, right? Then, let's say a couple weeks later, Jane from down the street's like, hey, we're going to put on a potluck. Do you want to do all this? And your natural response before would have been like, yes, because I don't want Jane and the gang to hate me, right? Now you're checking in with yourself first because the universe is working with you and it's saying, hey, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to do it. You say in that moment, you know what? Let me check my calendar and get back with you. You don't even have to answer it right then, right? But you're changing the way instead of the automatic yes. You're saying, give me a moment to think about it. And then you can come back, circle to it later and go, you know what? Nope. I'm sorry. I can't. And it doesn't have to be some long explanation. No is a sentence, right? You can say, nope, I can't. Thanks. I look forward to the next one. And go from there. I tell you what, that's going to do huge wonders up here in the brain and it's going to start rewiring things. Okay. And you do that again and again and again and again. And there's no longer going to be that back and forth inside of you over time for when you do have to say no and when you have to speak up for yourself, right? These things, we can do it. Our brains can do it. And it's all possible with will and intent and really, really being committed to the change. And that's what Taurus is asking us to do. That's the other side of it. Taurus is practical. It is all about action, right? It looks at Scorpio on the other side and it's like, hey there, whiny, emotional side. Let's not stay stuck in what's happened. Let's move forward and let's make a change, And we're all getting a revamp on what is our comfort zones, what is our stability, and what's familiar to us. Because Taurus in itself is going through this 80-year cycle. And interestingly enough, it started in that same time frame of 2018, but it really hit in 2020, where Uranus brings things through unexpectedly. And Taurus is the sign that deals with our comfort zones, our money, our finances, our health, and everything that we find of security and stability has been hit by this unexpected planet. But you know why this unexpected planet does what it does is because it looks at the situations that we're in and it goes, it doesn't work for you anymore to be a yes person. And I'm going to dramatically change that so that way the real you can come out and you can get this abundance that you're looking for. Really, truly, that's what it's pushing us to do. So ultimately, to end this video, that's what I really want to say is right now, there's a lot that's coming up. I know it. I know it's in you. I know you have the strength to handle it. I know there's special guides and angels that are around you now that have never been around you, that are ready to help you in this time of transition, change, dealing with the grief, coming up with a plan and moving forward with your feet on the ground to find this new stability. Because that's what we're all going through right now. All these unpredictable events that are leading us to find what new stability and the new foundation under our feet mean. It really is. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve. It's the healthy process. It gets it out of your system and it heals ultimately. So I say in this time frame, just let that come. Let that come. Let it journal. Sit with it. Write it down and be ready to release at the time of that November 8th moon. Now, I tell you what, it's going to be different for every single person's chart. Maybe this is hitting in your financial sector a little bit harder. Maybe it's hitting in your relationship sector. Maybe it's hitting in your children's sector. I don't know. As an astrologer, I would highly encourage you to look to see what house your natal sun lands in and how it's aspected and what other areas it's pinging and ponging off of in your chart. Look to see where Scorpio is at in your natal chart. Look to see where Taurus is at, because that is where this is going to be. This is where it's going to be hitting you the most, okay? If that is confusing as all get out to you, that's where you reach out to someone like me, a professional astrologer like me, and I can help walk you through that and help you find that new stability as well. So I will put a link in the notes below that has a link to my Facebook page that I don't really ever update, but it's still there. And a link to be able to set up a time for an appointment if you do want to go through that. And you need that extra guidance and support through these times, because we all do. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much. I hope that brings a little bit of reassurance in this time that you are definitely not crazy, that you are ready to move forward and be the strong person that you are ready to move into this next phase. Thank you so much. Bye.